My name is Eaton Dunkleberger. I am the CEO of the Community Foundation of Northern Nevada. And David, thanks a ton for extending the invite and making that connection.
Yes,
Ginger,
thank
I'm
you.
just really glad to be here talking about our work. So I'll start to just talk a little bit about what the Community Foundation is and importance of local charitable giving for our community. Then we'll talk about how real estate can play a role in charitable giving and tax planning. So Community Foundation, we're an independent 501c3 nonprofit, and our goal is to grow and improve charitable giving in our community. Critically important because, as you all know, maybe one of the big reasons you've either come here or have stayed here is no state income tax, right? Phenomenal, but it means that some of our funding pipelines for social safety net, support for youth and elderly care, those types of things, they're not as funded as in other communities. And so charitable giving plays a much higher elevated role in Northern Nevada than it might in other surrounding states. We work on building charitable giving to help uplift our community, and we really do that in three ways. One is we help make charitable giving simple and efficient. The other way we do it is we help make your charitable giving more effective. And then finally, we help make charitable giving more collaborative. So when we can bring donors from around the community to tackle thorny problems, typically they get solved. And I will say, I moved to Northern Nevada 16 years ago. I am amazed consistently. Like Northern Nevadans, we roll up when we see a problem, we bind together with our neighbors, we roll up our sleeves and we solve it, which is fantastic. Having worked in other communities actually around the world, that doesn't happen. It's a pretty unique thing where we can get together and actually solve things locally. So, speaking of local giving, I like to kind of start every presentation that I get to give with the importance of giving locally. I'll just refer to my notes here quickly, sorry. So, Northern Nevadans are incredibly generous. About 80% of us give to charity, which is phenomenal. One of the issues, though, is that a majority of that charitable giving actually goes outside of our community. So one of our big tenets in the Community Foundation is how can we orient that charitable giving so that it's helping our community right here, helping the folks in this room, helping the folks that might be in the gas line at Costco next door to us, helping the folks we see and interact with every day. I'll use the example of St. Jude's. We're probably really familiar with that. It's a phenomenal nonprofit that does cancer research for children, right? Like what an amazing nonprofit. And St. Jude's has served about 10 kids from Northern Nevada over the last decade. So when we think about like how are we able to help our local community, I like to really encourage folks to think about ways to give to local nonprofits. And there's 4 reasons I think that's important. One is there's a local economic impact. Every dollar you give of charitable giving has the $3 of local economic impact. And as investors in real estate, we all know that a good, healthy economy sure helps real estate portfolios, kind of helps a rising tide floats all boats, right? The second one is local human impact. So I mentioned the St. Jude's example. They're not alone. National nonprofits have a really hard time investing in Northern Nevada. Typically, most of their services are going to densely populated cities on the coasts. And that's just a reality. That's where a lot of people live. It's also a place where they can gather a lot of additional donations. Third element is oversight. So if you give $10,000 to St. Jude's, you're going to get probably a phone call and a card. Probably get a lot of phone calls and a lot of cards from them, but it's hard to know where those dollars went. There's not really an oversight. Are you going to go fly to Memphis, Tennessee, where their hospital is, and kick the tires? Contrast that if you gave $10,000 to the Northern Nevada Cancer Foundation, Northern Nevada Children's Cancer Foundation. I can guarantee you're getting coffee with the CEO if you want that. Right? Or for us, we can call on your behalf and make sure that that gift is going exactly where you wanted it to go and how it was spent. And then the last one is overhead. So we probably see news articles a lot about super highly paid CEOs of nonprofits, large national offices. We see lots of infomercials on late night TV about nonprofits. Your donations are paying for that. And so we like to really try to make every dollar that was hard earned that's given to charity go as far as possible. And when you're giving to local nonprofits, you're not paying for things like large-scale marketing campaigns, advertising, national offices, those types of things. Those dollars are going right into our community. Make sense? Great. So let's go back, we'll talk about the Community Foundation, a little bit about what we do. I will make this quick, but the first thing I mentioned is making giving efficient. So first is we want to structure gifts to maximize tax savings. The less you give to Uncle Sam, the more you can give locally, which benefits our community. The second one is helping navigate complex gift structures or assets. We want, most folks' assets are not in their wallet or their pocketbook or their checking account. We're in all sorts of assets, and we want to help you figure out the most tax efficient and wealth efficient way to give those assets. And then finally, developing giving vehicles that support your goals, and I'll give a little bit of examples of that you'll see through the presentation. We can work with a wide range of assets. We'll be focusing on real estate today, but there's lots of options there. And then we work to be your home for philanthropy. So we're probably giving to multiple nonprofits, you're giving at different levels, those types of things. We help you organize all that so that it's nice and simple for you and your family. You get one tax letter, et cetera, and you're just able to really dial in. So let's talk about making giving effective. So we spend a lot of time with our donors doing philanthropic advising. We want to understand and identify your goals and strategies. What do you care deeply about? Because when you're passionate about a cause, you're going to want to give more and help that cause really get solved for our community. We'll help you evaluate and structure the grants that you're making from your funds. If you want to do something unique, like a scholarship fund or special grant making or charitable vehicles, we help you structure those. And we ensure that the gifts are used as you intend. You make a gift to a local nonprofit, you're one person making a transaction with an organization. We give over $20 million a year into this community. Nobody wants to piss off the Community Foundation, right? So when we say this gift is supposed to be used for X, they use it for X. And when they don't, we remember that for the rest of our donors. So it'd be really helpful. Local expertise. So we meet with 2 to 3 nonprofits a week, understanding the local landscape of nonprofits across the region, making sure that we can then relay that information to our donors to help match nonprofits and programs with their goals. We also recommend new opportunities for high impact philanthropy. So there's probably lots of nonprofits kicking around here that you don't know much about. If you're interested in getting recommendations, we can say, hey, really new, cool thing happening in our community that you can be part of, and that can be a lot of fun and kind of open up new venues for giving. And then community leadership. I mentioned binding donors together to help solve problems. None of us likely in this room have enough charitable giving to solve anything on our own, right? So when we can find opportunities for donors to come together and make a really catalytic impact, that can be really exciting for folks and really get to see some exciting impact in the community. So just to give you a sense, that we are real and lasting. So we're about 28 years old. We have over 300 active funds, and we manage over $200 million of charitable assets. I think today it's around $240 million. We've also given over $200 million of grants into our community over those 28 years, and over $10 million of scholarships to Nevadan students, ranging from preschool all the way to medical school, which we're really proud of. We want to be viewed not as a bank for funds, but really an active giving vehicle. So create a charitable vehicle with your donation. We want to help you put that to work in the community. That's really important for us. And I just wanted to share some real estate examples. We've done a lot of different types of real estate, raw land across the West, single family homes similarly, commercial in Reno, Las Vegas, Sacramento, Industrial, we actually own the world's largest diving board company, and Sparks, Duraflex. A lot of legacy giving, so when we talked about estate planning, folks might include real estate in their estate plans. And then we're actually working on our first retained life estate, which is a charitable giving vehicle where, let's say you could, as an example, you could make a charitable gift of the house you live in, but you get to stay there until you pass, and then when you do pass that, those dollars will go to your charitable wishes. In the meantime, you get the tax deduction up front, which is pretty exciting. So, and that's for a vacation home in Montana that I think is going to be, that'll be a really neat thing for that family. Okay, so that's the Community Foundation in a very brief nutshell. Any questions on the Community Foundation before I dive in a little bit? Oop. Oh, good. Great. Any questions on the Community Foundation before I dive into some ideas around charitable giving and real estate? Okay. How's this going speed-wise? Am I talking at the right tempo? Or okay, good. I don't want to get too slow here, but so just let me know if I'm going too fast. So, what are some of the benefits of using real estate to give? I mean, we know oftentimes one, real estate is oftentimes can be an incredibly large portion of our net worth, right? It's a really large portion of our net worth. Also, it can have a lot of taxes, tax consequences, as David mentioned. So, benefits of giving real estate for tax: you can get a current day tax deduction. You can also avoid capital gains taxes. You can support charities, causes you care deeply about. You could set up a scholarship, or typically when folks are working with the Community Foundation, they're setting up a donor advised fund or other charitable vehicle where they put the money into the charitable vehicle today, and then over the next, let's say, decade or years of some time, they're actually putting that money to work. So what's nice about that is you can figure out all the tax deduction elements and the amount you're going to give to charity today, but you don't have to match that to the specific charity or cause that you want to give it to over the next several years. So then you can deploy those dollars over several years. We help you invest and manage that fund and help you create a plan to give that out to the community. So we're going to talk three different types of options of charitable giving. The first is going to be just, I own a house, I give that house to charity. The second one is I give a portion of the value of that house to charity. And the third is a charitable remainder trust, and I'll describe these. So option one, giving full ownership in a property to charity. So you can use any type of asset there, and in fact industrial should probably be up there, but commercial, residential, raw land tend to be the ones we see most often. Typically, again, working with the Community Foundation, you would give that into a donor advised fund or a legacy fund at the, and then that vehicle helps fulfill your charitable giving goals. Typically, we sell properties immediately, but there are some exceptions to that, and we can talk through them. I'll share some examples of that. They may be held long-term if it makes sense, but typically when you're giving a gift to charity, you have to relinquish control. So keep that in mind. Like, even if you really want that thing to be held for long-term, it has to be at the discretion of the Community Foundation as fiduciaries of those charitable dollars. So does that make sense? Cool. Okay, so option one, giving full ownership. Option two is giving partial ownership in a property. So typically you can give a portion of a property as a tool to offset taxes on your gain. So when you give a portion of the property to charity, and 30% is kind of a fun number, because typically when you give 30%, you end up paying zero taxes. It's inevitably the way the model works, it kind of all evens out. So on that 30%, you're not paying any capital gains, and you get a charitable deduction on that 30% you've given. Typically that erases your taxes on that property. So none of that, not only are you getting that part of the property that you didn't give, all those dollars go in your pocket, you're also creating a new charitable pocketbook that you can give from into the community. And the third option is a charitable remainder trust. Let me just walk through it real quick and then I'll talk about some of the benefits. So the donor gives, in this case, let's say a single family home into the charitable remainder trust. That charitable remainder trust for your lifetime or for a specified period of years is actually paying you a passive income now. And then at the end of the term, let's call it a lifetime term, at the end of you and your spouse's lives, whatever is remaining, so remainder trust, whatever's remaining goes into a charitable vehicle and gets deployed alongside your charitable wishes. So the benefits are you eliminate taxes on the gain, you get a upfront charitable tax deduction, you get long-term passive income, and the remainder funds your charitable giving goals. You can help uplift our local community. So let me pause there and just make sure before I jump into the next, at a high level, charitable remainder trust makes sense. We'll get into more detail, but I don't want to skip ahead here. So options 1 and 2, we're going back into the gifting an entire property and gifting a portion of a property. So I wanted to get to some examples here, kind of stories, to make this feel a little more tangible for folks, right? So typically you want to avoid tax, right? That's a key highlight. You give the property into a donor advised fund, a DAF, and you get to decide later actually where those charitable dollars go into our community, and we'll help you out with that. Examples, so a zero tax scale, a sale. So this was that kind of magical 30% number I mentioned. Sparks single family home, individual donated 30% of that property before the sale. We sold it together. That 30% ended up in their donor advised fund, resulted in $0 in tax for the donor, and they had $500,000 of charitable funds to then deploy into the community. Another example, recent one, a gift of a condo in downtown Reno. They gifted 100% into their donor advised fund. We sold the property as the manager of their donor advised fund, and this donor cares really deeply about access to mental health care for women and children, and these dollars are funding those projects across the community. Then finally, an example I'll bring up, a commercial property in Las Vegas. The donor actually gifted 100% of the property, but asked us to hold it long-term and rent it for an extremely reduced rate to their favorite nonprofit. So they care a lot about a think tank that's in Las Vegas around libertarian issues. That nonprofit actually rents that office space from us for about 10% of market rate. This helps the nonprofit incredibly because it reduces their costs. They can put more money into their mission. But the donor was worried, what happens if this nonprofit goes bankrupt? I don't want to have given them, an office building. So if the nonprofit goes bankrupt or changes their mission, we still own the office building. We could sell it, and then it could fund other charitable interests that donor has. So, does that make sense? Cool. So this was supposed to say strategy 3, sorry. Charitable remainder trust. So this could be, you could give an entire property into a CRT, or you could do a partial portion of a property, and I've got examples of both of those. So again, the concept here is you're converting active income, rental income, into passive income, avoiding capital gains, and getting an upfront charitable tax deduction. You or your heirs, depending on how you set it up, get to keep the income and give later to charity. And you get to decide several things. One is the term of the charitable remainder trust. So is it going to be a 5-year term, a 10-year term, or for the lifetime of yourself or the lifetime of you and your spouse? You also get to decide the income level. So they can range from something like 5% of the total trust value every year that you're gaining in income. They can go all the way up to 20% of the trust value annually. Now that has to be a shortened term, but you can throttle that up and down. The last part that I didn't put on this slide that you can decide is who actually is the beneficiary of that income every year. So we have some charitable remainder trusts where that income accrues to them. So David, do you mind if okay.
No, go ahead.
So David's setting up a charitable remainder trust. The income is going to accrue to him and his wife for the length of their lives. We have other charitable remainder trusts where they've selected their daughter as the beneficiary, and for the length of her life, it supports her. Or other folks, you can select anybody you want. They don't even have to be related to you, but you get to decide who the beneficiary is. Two examples I'll use. One is someone gave a year and a half ago 30% of an LLC that essentially owned a warehouse in Sacramento. The income supported actually their children for 10 years. It was part of a wealth planning component, like they were going to have a gap in income for 10 years, and so they wanted their kids to have steady passive income for 10 years. The remainder funds charitable giving, specifically to the Boys and Girls Club and a couple other nonprofits, specifically focusing on opportunity for disadvantaged youth, which is really core to this individual's passions and interests in our community. The second one is a gift of 100% of a rental house in Sparks into a CRAT. You may not, yeah, so this is David and Lucy. And without, I don't want to speak too much for David and Lucy, but interests were having a passive family income, right? If you have a ton of rental properties, one can be hard work, but two, you can get consolidated asset wealth. Second thing is simplifying your estate, and particularly as folks get older. We hear folks saying they want to simplify their estate and life. And then the last part is charitable giving. So I like the way you put it, David, do good works. It's really important, right, for our community, paying it forward, those types of things. So opportunity to really set up charitable remainder trust that can make a difference not only for their family, but also deeply for our community. Let me just pause here real quick, catch up with my notes. So let's talk about the typical profile for a charitable remainder trust. We've seen a lot of increased interest for individuals with investment real estate, real estate properties, or real estate investment properties for charitable remainder trusts. And there's a few reasons for that. One, typically real estate has experienced a lot of appreciation, so there's a lot of gains to shelter. Additionally, we're seeing that a lot of folks that have built wealth with real estate are looking to simplify, whether that means they don't want to have as much wealth in specifically real estate alone, or it's a lot of work to manage real estate properties, right? So they may want to convert some of those real estate to properties to passive income. We do work with a lot of folks who have no children, or their children are okay, right? They've set up their lives, they're doing all right, they don't need that extra income, and folks are thinking about, oh, what could I do that will impact our community, vice just passing it all on to the kids. I mentioned a couple of these, but any client who has real estate transactions and also gives to charity tends to be a great person to talk with about charitable remainder trust, with the idea that you can save on tax dollars, receive an income, and give more to charity, which can be really exciting for folks. So we're going to get into a little bit more of the weeds on these examples. To start, I thought I just would use an example residential property that could fund a donor advised fund or a charitable remainder trust. I tried to make this really easy with a rental house, unoccupied, no mortgage. House is worth $650,000. I probably should have used $584 for our medium price today, but basis is $50,000 now, and we chose a donor as in the 37% income tax bracket with 20% capital gains. These may be a little high, but I wanted to keep a standard across all of these. The other caveat I wanted to just mention, the couple are both 75 years old. We wanted to just kind of give them an age. And I did not include transaction costs in this across the board. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. This is for illustrative purposes, and we can get to a new level of weeds if anybody's interested in digging in there with us. So sound good? So this is our property. We're going to send it through a few different models of what happens when. This is the slide we're going to end with. So I wanted to show it to you up front. It's a comparison just to show you there's a straight sale. So forget about all the stuff I've been talking about, right? I'm just going to sell this property on the open market. The second one we're going to look at is a zero tax sale, where you've given 30% of the property to charity ahead of the sale, and then we sell it together. The other one we're going to look at is 100% of the gift. So this property, you gave 100% of it to charity. And the last one we're going to look at is giving 100% of the property into a charitable remainder trust. Sound good? Okay, great. And start with a sale here on this slide, and then we'll go into each of these. So just to kind of level set us, we've got a value of $650,000. We'll assume that's what the sale price is as well. Taxes paid would be $113,000 with a net benefit of around $540,000. So that sound good for a base case, and then we'll jump into the charitable giving cases. You look like you might have a question.
No, I was just taking a...
Oh, good. Okay, great. Good. All right, so we're going to jump into the zero tax sale first, and we'll work our way across this way. So this is a little bit of an eye chart, so I definitely, if you want to refer to it in here, that might be helpful. But so this is called a zero tax sale. Typically, you give around 30% of the property to achieve this. So in this case, value of the property is $650K. We had a basis of $50,000, so there's going to be a gain of $600,000. If you avoid, so there's going to be a portion, $435, that is going to the seller, 30% going to the community, a fund at the Community Foundation, that's CFNN, Community Foundation of Northern Nevada, of $215,000. So in this case, the cash from the sale that the donor would get would be $435,000. The tax on the gain would be $75,000. But for the $215,000 that was gifted, you both avoid capital gains and you get a tax deduction for the full $215,000. So we know you get a tax deduction. That's not dollars in your pocket. You have to convert that with your tax rate into a number that gets us, with the capital gains, to $75,000. These roughly cancel each other out, so the net benefit to the donor is they get $435,000 in cash, but they also then have a charitable fund of $215,000 that they can deploy. They can deploy for charitable giving. So that's this idea of you're filling not only your checkbook but also your charitable pocketbook. Does that make sense? I'm seeing some. Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Okay, I'm going to keep going then. So let's compare. So actually, let's go back just to see. So as a reminder, you sell it for $650, you pay $113 in taxes, net benefit of $540-ish. For the zero tax sale, you gift 30%, the taxes wash, you net only $434, right? So you net less, but you also then get this $215,000 charitable fund that you can deploy out to our local community. Make sense? Okay, so we'll compare that to a gift of 100% of a property. So this is the concept of this same house. You say, here, I'm going to put it all into a donor advised fund. So you get to bypass all of the capital gains on the property. You also get a charitable tax deduction of $650,000, so the fair market value for the house, which in this case nets the donor or the family a tax savings of $227,000. So if we add $227,000 to the bypassed gain of $113,000, the total saved is $340,000 for that family. And they now have a $650,000 charitable fund that they can deploy across the community. So what we see when folks are giving 100% of a property, they're typically, they're not looking for, it's not a cash flow strategy, right? They are deploying all those dollars for charity. One of the nice things to think about, though, is that this tax savings can be deployed across multiple years. So the IRS has caps on how much charitable giving you can give each year compared to your income. So if this number of $227,000 exceeded the limits for your charitable giving, you can extend that over 5 years, so you can actually make sure that you utilize the entirety of your tax savings. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so now we're going to get into charitable remainder trusts.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Over what period of time? Is there a cap on how long you can extend that over?
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk charitable remainder, and in this case, charitable remainder unit trust. So I've got one, the second slide's going to have more detail on it. I want to start by just grounding us again into the process of what a charitable remainder trust looks like. So the same property, right? $650,000 of fair market value, basis of $50,000, gain of $600,000. The donor puts the property into a charitable remainder trust. We would then sell the property and invest that $650,000. In this case, set up a 6% unit trust. Again, that can range from all the way down to 4 or 3%, although I don't know why you would go lower, all the way up to 20% we've seen before. So
That has to do with your age?
There's a couple factors. You mean the 6%?
Yeah.
So there's a few factors there. So the way the IRS calculates your tax deduction for a charitable remainder trust is the net present value of all the payments that you'll be getting over the term of the trust. Net present value of all those payments compared to the value of the gift. So what you'll see is, as this 6% goes up, your upfront charitable deduction goes down. So it's kind of there's some levers you can pull to say, okay, so we would take your age, put it into actuarial tables that tells us your estimated age of the beneficiary. In this case, let's assume it's you. And by combining the percentage, so the payment stream compared to your anticipated age, that's how we factor out what the tax deduction would be. So there are there's some levers there to play with, and typically when we talk with folks, we might run 3 or 4 or more scenarios to kind of figure out how to dial that in. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. So in this case, we chose a 6% trust for illustration. So that's going to deliver $39,000 a year in income, or 6% of the trust value, to the beneficiary for life. And then at the end of the trust, at the end of their lives, the community foundation would have $560,000 to execute your charitable wishes. So in this case, we have a fund agreement. If I can use David and Lucy's example, David and Lucy have a fund agreement that specifies exactly how they'd like those dollars to be given to charity. And within that, they can change that at any time. So as we work together, they figure out, just met this charity, or I just learned about this cause and I'm really passionate about it, let's switch things around, continue to modify it through their lifetime. Once they pass, we execute their most recent wishes, and that's a free process through the life of the Charitable Remainder Trust. So that's the overview of a Charitable Remainder Trust. Let's look at some of the numbers. Perfect. So gift the property into the Charitable Remainder Trust. We bypass all the gain, which is because you've been the trust is within our nonprofit, so it's actually like a gift to a nonprofit, a trust within a nonprofit. So that saves the $113,000 of capital gains. There's also an income tax deduction of $370,000 for this Charitable Remainder Trust, which will actually save them $130,000 in income tax. The principal then of $650,000 will pay out $39,000 a year for the length of this couple's lives, so both of their lifetimes. And in this case, it's estimated that they will live 13.3 years, which gives them a income through those years of $485,000. At the end of their lifetimes, whatever is remaining in the trust, in this case $560,000, that goes into a charitable fund and executes this family's wishes for charitable giving. Does that make sense? Great. So, getting back into our comparison slide. So what I tried to do is make this as like apples to apples as possible. So we've got the sale again, right? Sell the house, pay $113,000 of tax, net benefit $540,000. The zero tax sale, sell the house, you gift 30% of the house, we then sell it together. The family would pay tax of $75,000, but they also would save tax of $75,000. So you get a wash there, and the net benefit, it's like the cash that they get in hand is $435,000, and they have an additional $215,000 to give to charity. The 100% gift, this is where you're giving 100% of the property into let's say a donor advised fund. So it sells for $650,000. The donor gets to bypass that $113,000 of gains. They also get an upfront tax deduction netting $340,000 of benefit. And they have now $650,000 to donate to charity that is in a fund ready to go. And then finally we had the CRUT, so gifting 100% of a property into a charitable remainder trust. Taxes saved of $242,000 or $243,000, plus they now have a $39,000 annual income for their lifetimes. At the end of that, they have a $560,000 charitable pocketbook to do good works, as David said, in the community. So this kind of gives you a sense of options side by side with the idea that you get to kind of pick and choose options. So, there's lots of sub options within this. There is a tremendous amount of options here. We're happy to run illustrations, crunch numbers on any types of examples you're interested in exploring. I did include Christina's information here if you'd like to dive in. We'd like to work with folks, CPAs, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors. We want to be part of your professional advisor team, so don't think of us as someone that's trying to knock those folks out, but rather work collaboratively with them to make sure that whatever thing you're doing around charitable giving fits your broader wealth planning strategies, tax planning strategies, family planning strategies, those types of things. So let me pause there and open it up. Yeah, please.
Okay.
I run into this issue with clients of mine all the time when I'm doing estate planning.
Yeah.
Whether they're veterans or they're getting older, all of a sudden they start worrying about like nursing home care. If you're a veteran, your assets have to be below 140,000.
Yeah.
You want Medicare, Medicaid to cover things, and they don't want their, they can go right in a revocable and take your assets if they want to. There's a look back period. Right, I can stick their assets in an irrevocable trust, but for veterans and for Medicaid, it's a 5-year look-back period. They can go in the irrevocable, take the assets. Medicare, it's a 2-year look-back. Can the CRT avoid that? Or can they go in the CRT and take the assets? I run into this all the time.
That is a great question. I may have to answer that
Because
remotely.
otherwise, I have people will send it to you.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
We'll find out.
I don't believe they can pierce that because you have essentially gifted that property to us. We've never had anybody reach out to us to try to pierce one of those trusts, but we should
Because otherwise,
figure
they
that out.
lose everything, but instead, they could gift it to the CRT. The CRT can still give their beneficiaries
Right.
monetary value for a certain number of years. And
Yes.
at least something's better than nothing, right?
Right. I've got your card right here, so you'll be hearing from us. Yeah.
And I do have a nonprofit for veterans too.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Great. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Veterans that are incarcerated get back in the workforce, partnered with my church, Grace Church. this
Okay,
year.
great. Grace Church is incredibly philanthropic. They've just been awesome. So thank you. Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you for your service.
Great, thanks. What other questions? Yeah, Richard.
Out of the groups that you outlined, where do you see most of the activity? Out of the different categories?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is interesting. All right. So meaning like a zero tax sale or a 100% gift or a CRT.
Right.
We're seeing more and more interest in CRTs. I think that allure of a regular passive income is really becoming popular.
Right.
But it's interesting. Folks' needs are so different. I wouldn't say there's just a vanilla like, okay, come on in the office, you get plan A. Folks, they have all different interests and needs, and I'm always amazed, like it's pretty broad. So it also depends on stage of life and family planning and issues with heirs, I think, is some of the biggest stuff. So, like organization of a family, whether there's kids or not, where you are in kind of wealth building process, it drives to different places. The last thing I'll say is that, like, while everybody is allergic to paying taxes, some folks are highly allergic to paying taxes, and so that's also that will also try to drive folks in different places along there. So, yeah, I'm sorry that wasn't a better answer, but they probably flow across all of these pretty regularly. Something to keep in mind. I'm glad this just popped in my mind, but one of the keys about giving properties to charity is you can't have a buyer lined up already. So if you already have like a sales agreement drafted up with a buyer, the IRS really frowns on that. So if you're thinking of doing any charitable gift planning with your property, talk to us before you identify a buyer, not, oh my goodness, we're in our 30-day escrow period, because it'll be too late. So, what other questions? And I can broaden this too around charitable giving if there's questions generally around charitable giving, because that's our expertise.
All right, I've
Yeah.
got a question then. So I have a family member that has home's worth about $1 million. It's in Connecticut, and she has a reverse mortgage on it for only about $400,000. Obviously, she's getting some income from that. Could there still be a way that she does a CRT? Because at the end, you could just sell the house, pay off the reverse mortgage on there, and take the whole property.
Right.
Is there still something that can be done and add on
So
to her
there
income?
are ways to, if there is a reverse mortgage or any mortgage, there are ways to clear that. The easiest is to pay it off. That's the simplest, but simplest from my perspective, might be hard for your family member, right? Easiest is to pay it off, but there are several options, including you can get permission from the lender. That's one element, because they'll see this income stream as an opportunity. Then there's 3 other options. I'd have to look them up, but there's about 5 strategies that you could use that don't include just paying off the mortgage. So
Okay.
yeah.
Because she was gonna leave the property to me, but I was gonna set up animal foundations with it. It's probably
Okay,
something that could
yeah.
just be done with the CRT and do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the other option she would maybe
Same thing,
consider is a
yeah.
retained life estate. I mean, I'm assuming, is she living in the property, or is
She's
this?
living in the
Yeah,
property.
so I mean, that could be an interesting, if she were to look at a retained life estate. There's a lot of the benefits of these, but you wouldn't get a person income stream from that, but that could be an interesting potential option. Yeah,
You're talking about raw land.
yeah.
Does it have to be local
No,
anywhere?
it can be anywhere. Yeah, and in fact, well, yeah, it can be anywhere. We are working right now. We have a Piggly Wiggly in Tennessee that we are unwinding right now. So, yeah, or the real estate that has a Piggly Wiggly as a tenant there in Tennessee that we're unwinding now.
If somebody does a life estate, are they obligated to live in the property?
No. So the one we're working on right now is a vacation property. So this family is, I'd guess they're late 70s. They think they're going to be able to use this property for 5 more years, but then they're not going to want to travel to snowy Montana for ski trips anymore. And so they're thinking of a retained life estate for that vacation property. Did that answer?
So they will be able, once they don't travel, they will be able to rent it out and get some income off of it
Oh,
during
good.
their lifetime?
Different strategy here. So for the retained life estate, it's a vacation property that they don't want to rent out, and for this specific family. So they want to use it for 5 more years, so they get use of it for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, it goes into their charitable fund. And they get the tax deduction from that donation today. For a CRT, is that maybe for like a charitable remainder trust, if you wanted to get an income, you can use any type of property. It doesn't have to be your own house. In fact, typically it's not. Typically it's an income property. Yeah.